Teresa's the professional counselor. So very seldom do I go into the counseling room. There have been occasions when we have, worked with couples together. And very seldom does Teresa stand and do this. So we each have our element that we're more comfortable in. But I guess since I went to the counseling room last time, she owed me a trip to the public stage. But I'm not sure this is her favorite thing to do.
It is not.
But I think we've got a lot of good information to share. Let's I won't reread because actually the scripture that was read set the stage perfectly. If you remember, Adam said, "This is bone of my bones," and the Lord said, "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and unites his wife to become one flesh." And that's repeated again, just for your records, in Matthew 19:4-6. It's repeated again in Mark 10:7-9. It's that constant theme. So here's what we're going to try to do tonight. And this is what I tell a couple all the time. Since God invented marriage, it would make sense to kind of look at his plan for how we want to be effective in having a great marriage. And that would just make sense to me. The man who invented it, the God who invented it would know something about it. So that's, in terms of sharing those things, that's kind of what we want to do with you guys here tonight. So we're going to start with the whole idea of isolation. Isolation, and that's the opposite of oneness. And see, that's how Satan works. Okay, so God has called us to be one, but Satan, in his attempts to be divisive and destructive, attempts to isolate us. And so, guys, what we're going to do tonight is talk about 5 crucial threats to marriages, that if we can identify those threats and not allow them to creep in our marriage, we can have, not only a good marriage. As a matter of fact, one reason that America doesn't have, and forget about America, Jackson, Mississippi, one reason there are not more great marriages is because we have a lot of good marriages. And Teresa and I had from the very beginning, what I think was a very good marriage, but I wasn't satisfied with that. I was like, our marriage can be better. I never wanted to be the person where it was miserable to go home. And in our 26 years of marriage, that's not the way we've been, by the grace of God. So we're going to talk a little bit about isolation. In those passages, there are basically 3 things that we can pull out of that passage about leaving and cleaving. So T, set the stage for us about the 3 things that God kind of calls us to do.
Okay, number 1, which is leave. This indicates that in the family there are 2 relationships. There's a parent-child relationship, and this is a temporary one. We get them ready to launch them off. We don't want them to stay there. We get them out of the house. There's a husband-wife relationship, and this is the permanent one. This is what God has joined together, and that no man separate. And that comes from Matthew. Problems occur in the family life when these 2 roles are reversed. The parent-child relationship is treated as a primary relationship. And I know women that the children are young, they need our care, and yes, we do, that's our job. We nurture them, we help them, we raise them. But that is not the number 1 relationship. It should be the husband-wife relationship.
And in counseling, Teresa can tell you, we see a lot of instances, like a lot of couples are asking us back in our interest as well, how is it being empty nesters? And I tell everybody, we're having more fun. I mean, and we enjoy our kids, we're 4 children, we enjoy our children, but this is a different time of our life, and since we never, guys, okay, let me tell you this, let me come back a couple of disclaimers. I don't know any other way than to keep it really real. So when we tell stories, we open up and let you guys see inside our house a little bit. Sometimes Teresa goes home and she's embarrassed. Why don't you tell the story? But I'm not embarrassed. You're not embarrassed. But we share really from the heart. And we see a lot of couples in trouble in their marriage primarily because they've always made their marriage about the kids. And now as the kids are leaving, they're kind of in trouble. I can tell our kids this all the time. Don't make any mistake how you fit in here. You got your mother, you got me, and you got y'all. Let's don't ever get confused. And I was like, that's kind of cruel. But I used to tell kids all the time. I mean, don't ever get confused about how y'all fit in this whole situation. We basically letting y'all stay with us. What's funny now that the kids are older, to hear them repeat stuff, because I used to say this to them all the time, especially when there was a dispute about, we have our own family meetings every Sunday actually, and if there was an issue, the kids could bring up what was a curfew or whatever. But when we couldn't come to an agreement, you want to give the kids a voice because you're not training little kids, you're training adults. So I used to say to them all the time, and now they repeat it. We know, Dad, he said all the time, y'all stay with me, I don't stay with you. He said all the time. And I used to say, your name is not on the mailbox. And so the point I'm making is, and we have great relationships with our children, but they understood that our relationship was always primary. And then, even to take it a step further, we modeled that Christ was the head of our home, and our relationship with him took even precedent over that. And that's kind of how we train. I think it sets a bad example when the kids, early on, I know I'm getting off track, but early on, this is one of the first things that dawned on me, y'all kids do this, because we were newly married at the time, and so kids would come and ask me something. I didn't know they already asked your mom. She said, no, y'all better with this. Okay, so early on, about the second time that happened, call me. Okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. The next time you come ask me something that you've already asked your mother, you're getting punished. And we can have it in the phone. I mean, see, it's just simple. Just simple. Because kids are smart. And they'll try to be divisive. So we just set that rule early on. The very next time, Mama says, no, you come ask me, you get in trouble. So that's what we mean when we talk about leaving, because, that relationship that you have at home, we're called to lead that relationship, and we're called to prepare our children to lead. We've counseled couples in the premarital stages, especially when guys, I can't remember the quote, people have told us stuff. One guy said, I can get another wife, but I can't get another mother. Okay.
And what we wanted to help him understand is now mother is in her place. And if mother is in her right place, she will help you come toward your wife. But sometimes those mothers are not there, so you have to understand the relationship between the husband and wife. This is a great institution, so we have to help them understand your wife has a place and your mother has a place. Not to say that your mother is not important, but she does have a place.
Is anybody here not married? We have like dating couples or engaged couples? Because what I was going to say, okay, as you guys, I don't know if now we do have somebody, but especially you who are married, encourage everybody you know who's not married to not get married without some premarital counseling. It sets the right stage for expectations. It does a lot of stuff. And here's the great thing. We've had couples in our premarital counseling to decide not to get married.
And yes, and she had invitations out, but they decided that wasn't the best thing to do. So that's, and at that point I was right with her. Now they did later get married and they're doing fine.
And we've had a lot of couples who should have made that same decision in our estimation, but they have said things like, well, but we've already told everybody we're getting married, the invitation's already gone. And it's just signs of trouble that we can see from the beginning. So the first thing we learn from the scriptures is to leave. Okay, next let's talk about cleaving.
All right, the Hebrew word cleave means like glue, being stuck together. Like pursuing someone hard after really pursuing them, and then sticking like glue. That's kind of a cleave from a Hebrew standpoint. This cleaving indicates such closeness that there should be no closer relationship than that between the spouses, that relationship. Not a formal friend, not a formal or any parent. That's how close that relationship should be.
And then the third thing is, and they become one flesh, marriage takes two individuals and creates a single entity. God has a different system of math. God's system of math is 1 + 1 = 1. You follow what I'm saying? 1 plus 1 equals 1. So we're talking about leaving, cleaving, and then becoming one flesh. Or, Pastor Cameron, if I was, this is probably how you would say it. You got the advanced training and so forth. This is probably how you would say it. Depart from where and what we used to be. Decide to have a permanent marriage and delight in our oneness. So depart, decide, and delight. That's what we're calling it. Depart, decide, and delight. And that decide thing is pretty important. But I want to illustrate that with a little story. 3 frogs, I can't remember if I told this last night. 3 frogs were sitting on a log. One decided to jump. How many were left? None. Okay, I heard none. I heard 2. 3 frogs were sitting on a log. One decided to jump. How many were left? 3. Okay. So the answer is all 3 were left because deciding to jump and jumping are 2 different things. So in addition to deciding to have a permanent marriage, take some steps to make this happen. Teresa told me this. These are the kind of conversations we have with the kids going. There's nobody to, if you will, interrupt our conversations. And so she told me this a couple of weeks ago. I never heard her say before. I came home early in our marriage, and things, weren't going well. It wasn't like we were about to split up, but it just wasn't going good. It just, hey, this can be better. And I said this to Teresa, 25 plus years ago. I'll tell you this story. Hey, things aren't going like I would want to go in our marriage. Let's decide what we're going to do, because obviously there is no choice but to stay married. So we put our options on the table. What can we do? We're going to stay married. We're going to stay married. We're going to stay married. Now, she never told me this until a couple weeks ago. Do you remember what you said?
I said, this is what I said, and this is what he said. He said, divorce is not an option. And that was security for me. That helped me understand that this man is in it for the long haul regardless. So, let's get it even better, because divorce is not an option. So I didn't have, that thought of loneliness, or we just got to get through this, or it's going to be a bad situation. Divorce is not an option, and that's the way marriage should be. It shouldn't be an option. Whatever problem arises in a relationship, let's work it out. There's no greener on the other side. God has put 2 people together. You are different. That's a wonderful thing. And I think God sits back and that's just, I think he kind of laughs at us sometimes. She thinks she's supposed to be like him. Or he thinks, she should be like him. And my husband did think I should be like him.
We're going to talk about this. Because that was one of the more frustrating things in our marriage, and still is to me. And here, just think about it, guys. We're going to talk about later, but oftentimes the thing that most attracted you to your spouse is the thing that most irritates you now. Think about it. And I know, like with Teresa, that used to be very frustrating to me, and I found myself saying, which I just had to really think about. I didn't know I was saying this, but basically what I was saying is, why isn't she more like me? And anyway, we're going to come to that in just a few minutes.
And I'm saying, I'm me. I'm not like you. And at that time, I did, being young, I tried to be more like him, but that wasn't me, so that was uncomfortable. But you find a lot of women who will go along with that thing for a long time, and they lose themselves. And they think, now who am I? What did I want in life? Because I tried to do everything he wanted me to do. And men, don't allow that. Let her be herself. Let her be who she is. And that even in that oneness, she's still an individual.
We're going to talk about we're equal, but not the same. That's a very important distinction. Equal, but not the same.
Different goals.
Different goals. So the whole idea then, okay, we're talking, the theme is oneness. So now we're going to share with you guys 5 things really quickly. What are the threats to oneness? Okay, God said, leave, cleave, the two shall become one. Okay, that's the master plan, that's clear. Okay, so why doesn't that work? What are the problems? What does Satan use to make that not work? So we're going to run through 5 threats to oneness, and what these threats ultimately cause is the opposite of oneness is isolation. Does that make sense? Okay, so